What is going on, everybody? James Hancock here. I'm back to review the new martial arts film, The Furious, and I'm pleased to report it absolutely lives up to the hype. It is ruthless, it is intense, and I fucking loved it. And while the movie featured some familiar faces both in front of and behind the camera that I was already familiar with, I was overjoyed to make a few fresh discoveries that I'll definitely be following from now on. And I just had an awesome experience watching the movie, and I was having to restrain myself from throwing punches and kicks while watching the flick. And I had this great experience in spite of the fact that I saw the movie in a shitty AMC theater with no air conditioning on a hot day in New York. Imagine a sweltering sweatbox full of halitosis and no ventilation of any kind. And then this special form of hell got even worse when the person behind me either started farting or just shit their pants outright. I was like, I'm in hell, but I'm liking this movie. But I guess I have to have a little bit of sympathy for the person behind me because the martial arts on display in this movie, they're so fucking intense and so brutal, a lot of people might lose control over their bodily functions. And if you're a fanatic for martial arts movies, it's a very good chance this movie's been on your radar for many months. You've probably already seen it multiple times. But if you're more of a casual fan where you kind of save your time and attention for the best martial arts movies, I think this is the best that I've seen since The Night Comes For Us back in 2018. Or at a minimum, Kill back in 2024. I liked Kill quite a bit, but I like The Night Comes For Us much more. But if you're a fan of The Night Comes For Us, the good news is Joe Taslim, the star of that movie, he is also one of the feature attractions in The Furious. And when it comes to my own taste in movies, I'm much more of a classic movie buff. I'm much more of a film historian. However, there's a special, unique pleasure when you can loudly proclaim that a new movie, a brand new movie, is fucking awesome. It just shows that there's signs of life for this medium that I love so much. There are filmmakers that are still worth following, and it gives me hope for the future because every single actor or filmmaker involved in this movie, I want to see whatever they're going to do next. But when it comes to martial arts movies, basically over the last 50 or 60 years, every once in a while a movie will come along that kind of cuts through where it starts to have broader appeal than just the diehard fans who eat this shit up. I'm talking about movies like The Raid or Ong Bak or Wheels on Meals or Enter the Dragon or any movie basically featuring Jet Li, Jackie Chan, Bruce Lee, Tony Jaa, any of the legends that you care to mention. And I think The Furious is destined to be one of those movies where it appeals to the diehard fans of martial arts movies as well as casual fans, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if it ends up on a lot of top 10 lists at the end of 2026. It'll definitely be on mine. Anytime a martial arts movie manages to break through, there's always going to be a lot of hyperbole surrounding the movie. You know, best action film of the decade, best martial arts movie of the century, etc., and so forth. But I think that's healthy and that's normal because there's something about a great martial arts movie that just brings out a really physical response. It's like watching an astonishing musical with a lot of great tap dancing. You're like, whoa, this is just awe-inspiring. It's like watching the Olympics or something like that. And if you follow combat sports, and those are the only sports that I follow, any boxing event or any MMA event is going to employ a lot of hyperbole, the GOAT versus the second best GOAT, etc. and so forth. It's just normal for people to hype up fights and get people excited because obviously they're trying to sell tickets. But when it comes to a movie like The Furious, I think a lot of people will get confused or develop unrealistic expectations based on the hypes. Let's try and cut through the BS and just get into some specifics. So let's start with some of the basics, like the plot and who made this thing. So here's the official premise as written over on IMDb. A father fights fiercely against ruthless kidnappers to save his abducted daughter. And that's okay, but what I would add is that there's an additional interested party who is fighting to find his missing wife, who's also a journalist who's been investigating all these missing children. And the movie basically says somewhere in Southeast Asia. I don't think they want any one country to sound like, well, how dare you portray us in such a negative fashion? Because in this fictional setting, the cops are in on the action as well. The cops are totally corrupt. And so there are all these missing persons posters all over the city of all these missing children. And as we learn, the cops are in on the action and they're getting a piece of the action as these kids become victims of human trafficking. But if you're looking for a great motivation for your hero, a father looking for his missing daughter, it doesn't get more emotional than that. You feel that emotion and you feel that passion. And what's cool is that the hero, he is a mute hero. And martial arts movies have a classic tradition of one-armed swordsman or blind swordsman. Basically, you give them one small limitation or disability, but they're an ass kicker all the same. And in this case, the actor's name, I'm sure I'm going to mispronounce this, but I looked up how to say it in advance. Miao Shi, I hope I'm saying that, but I'd never seen him in a movie before. He is awesome. He's so intense and he's so emotional and he's so passionate, but also he can whoop all kinds of ass. So it's very easy to get on his side. But his wingman in this movie basically turns into a buddy movie, which is always the best kind of action movie, whether you're talking about The Killer or Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. But his wingman is played by Joe Taslim, who people are very familiar with now. He's made some appearances in movies like the Fast and Furious franchise or the Mortal Kombat franchise. I first discovered him, I really kind of took notice of him in The Night Comes For Us. And if you're a fan of the Furious, you owe it to yourself to also see The Night Comes For Us. But as I mentioned before, there's a title card in the movie that just says somewhere in Southeast Asia, and that can also apply to the talent involved in making this movie, because we have a director who originally was from Japan, Kenji Tanigaki, but he moved to Hong Kong in 1993 because he was obsessed with Jackie Chan movies. But you have a lot of actors who are either Indonesian or Thai or Chinese, and they're constantly making references to which actors or which characters come from mainland China. But the actual location where they shot the movie was in Bangkok, Thailand. So whether you like your action movies from Hong Kong or Thailand or Indonesia or Japan, you're going to get a mix of all the above, because every once in a while, somebody who's really good at Kung Fu might go up against somebody who's wielding like a classic like Japanese sword. And so it's a nice blend of different influences and different talents, and they all bring their best work to the table. But if you're a fan of martial arts movies, and you've seen a lot of martial arts movies across several decades, sometimes it's easy to get a little blasé, where you're like, been there, done that, bought the t-shirt, where it's hard to find fresh innovation or fresh styles or fresh approaches to the action genre. And this movie employs something that I've really only seen in like horror movies involving zombies. And I don't know what the proper term of it should be. But there's a kind of choreography employed in this movie where I've never seen it before, where it's like a mountain of human beings that are all stacked up on top of each other, and they're all fighting, and somehow it makes sense and doesn't seem messy or chaotic. It all seems to be like this beautiful ballet of death, but I've never seen that employed before. I'm used to seeing like one person surrounded in a circle, like Bruce Lee style, or one-on-one, like in any action movie. But very rarely have I seen just like a mountain of human bodies where you have a hero on top, hitting people with a hammer and that sort of thing. And I've just, I sat there, I was like, what is the technical term for what they're doing? And so I think if you're overly familiar with the classics of the past and feel like there's nothing new that a martial arts movie that can show you that you haven't already seen in movies like Fist of Legend or any of the great classics of the past, I think The Furious will have a few surprises in store for you. But another ingredient that I absolutely loved was the photography and the camera work. So let's give a shout out to cinematographer Meteor Chung, because there's so many movies these days where if you look through the comments on the trailers, it's always like, turn on the lights. Like, why is it all so murky? Why is it all so gray? And anytime I complain that a movie has horrible cinematography, there's always some dumbass in the comments like, just turn up the brightness on your phone. I'm like, turning up the brightness on a shitty movie doesn't make the cinematography good. It just means you have a brighter, blurry image. And I guess I shouldn't argue with people who have zero taste or zero intelligence or basically zero ability to judge a movie in any way, shape, or form. But movies need to be lit. They need to have color. They need to have high contrast between the lights and darks. And they need to have dynamic camera work so you can see what the fuck is going on. And in this movie, there's no shaky cam bullshit. The cinematography and the camera work is as elegant and sophisticated. It's as key a part of the choreography as the actual choreography itself. So throughout the movie, I just sat back like, thank God we have some filmmakers who understand the audience is paying for a heightened level of experience. And if you're in a theater and your cinematography sucks, you cannot turn up the brightness on your phone. I mean, once again, let's not get sidetracked talking about the dumbasses online who sometimes I don't even think they know if they even know just how stupid they sound. The good news is the cinematography and the visuals in this movie are striking, and they're very enjoyable and very pleasing to the eye. And there's nothing better than having great imagery combined with good music. The composer, Olivia Zhaolin, if I'm saying that at all correctly, there's some dope tunes scattered throughout this where, two badass motherfuckers will strike some pose and suddenly, you get this hardcore electric guitar just shredding, and you're just like, fuck yeah, let's fight. And so if you're looking for that pulse-pounding sense of like adrenaline rushing through your veins, this movie absolutely will deliver. And as long as I'm singing this movie's praises, I have one final note to offer, but I have to be careful because I don't want to go into spoilers and I don't want to surprise one of the best ingredients of the movie. But there's a point in this movie where it starts to feel overly long, or like it might have missed its window for the climax. I was like, it was an incredible action movie, but it sadly kind of dropped the ball. What I did not know that there are going to be a couple surprises coming in the latter part of the movie. And I do think the movie is a little bit too long, and that's one of the reasons that a lot of people are feeling like, action exhaustion while watching this movie, because 2 hours of relentless brutality is kind of fucking crazy. It's a little bit like when you watch a UFC card that goes on for like 5 or 6 hours, and it's nothing but like vicious KOs. You're just like, whoo, starting to, can I tap out? I can't handle this much bloodshed. So I get that, but toward the end of the movie, let's just say a few characters rise to prominence that you don't anticipate will rise to prominence. And suddenly it's like you're watching a movie where you don't have 2 badasses, you have 5 badasses. And these 5 badasses are all riveting and interesting in their own right, but some of them are villains, some of them are not. But this is a movie that allows the villains to be villainous. There's so many chicken shit movies out there, and so many chicken shit shows where the villains are just like, misunderstood victims, and I can see things from their point of view. Let the bad guys be bad guys, like whether it's human trafficking or torture or dealing drugs or whatever the case might be. But the villains in this movie are fucking evil to the core. And if you pay close attention to the trailer, there's one familiar face. I won't say which side that he's on, but you'll recognize him from a few movies like The Raid and The Raid 2. But Yayan Ruhian, I'm sure I'm totally screwing that up. I don't know if he's Indonesian or where he's from, but he appears in a lot of Indonesian action movies. There's they're martial arts stars, and then they're like the true martial artists where what they can do is just dizzying, where their hands are a blur, their feet are a blur. You almost have to ask them, please slow down, because people can't see what the fuck you're doing. You're too goddamn talented. You're too slick. You're too quick. He is one of those guys, and it is always a joy to see him in action anytime somebody casts him in a movie. But getting back to the flaws of the movie, is it overly long? Yes, but it does stick the landing in really satisfying fashion. Like the last 20 minutes of the movie are by far the best 20 minutes of the movie. So not to worry on that front. But I have seen some people complaining about the fact that they got tired of the martial arts while watching this movie. And somebody very rightly complained, why would you go to see a martial arts movie and then complain about seeing a lot of martial arts? It's a little bit like going to see a Fred Astaire movie and complaining that you're seeing too much tap dancing, or going to see an erotic thriller and complaining that there's too much nudity. You go to an erotic thriller for the sex scenes. You go to a musical for the next level dancing. And if you go see a martial arts movie, yeah, you want to see the best goddamn martial arts you've ever seen. And obviously I love MMA. I'm obsessed with it. But watching MMA as a sport is very different from seeing the carefully constructed choreography of a brilliant martial arts movie. You're never going to see a fight like in The Furious in the octagon. It's just 2 very different things. One's real life and one is a pure fantasy. But if you crave that pure fantasy where you just see people doing the most intricate but savage and brutal and bloody and violent martial arts you've ever seen, yeah, the Furious is going to absolutely blow your mind. And if you're young, and if you haven't done your homework of the great martial arts movies of Thailand or Indonesia or Hong Kong or Japan or wherever, well then I hope the Furious will ignite people's appetite. Woo, I want to see 100 more movies like that. And then obviously once you exhaust all the martial arts movies, you can get into the actual movies with guns. Then you can get into John Woo and Shea Hark and all those guys and Ringo Lam. The good news is if you like Asian action movies, you'll never run out. There's so many good ones to see as long as you're open-minded about watching movies that have a little age on them. But yeah, The Furious, it's a brand new classic, and I will definitely be watching everything these actors and filmmakers do moving forward. So one final note before I wrap this up, and perhaps I'm just seeing what I want to see, or perhaps I'm trying to will this into being, but I'm noticing a new trend in 2026 that's familiar and exciting all at once, where movies with a smaller budget but a more specific style and a more specific target audience are thriving and really delivering, whereas the big, bland, kind of 4-quadrant movies that are supposed to appeal to everybody are underperforming. And it reminds me a little bit of what happened to Hollywood in the 1960s, where the big-budget historical epics and religious epics and the big-budget musicals started to fail. They were very old-fashioned, and the new Hollywood and the film school generation ushered in a whole new era, an era that included people like Francis Ford Coppola and Martin Scorsese and Arthur Penn and Mike Nichols and Sam Peckinpah and Robert Altman and all the legendary figures from that period, where the budgets came down and the artistic results and the commercial results were incredible. I hope we're seeing a similar thing right now where movies like The Mandalorian and Grogu, or movies like Masters of the Universe, or movies like Disclosure Day, people are starting to recognize, why are we spending $100 to $200 million on these movies that no one really likes all that much? You can spend $10 million and make a movie like Backrooms, or you can spend $1 million and make a movie like Obsession, or you can spend $30 million and make a movie like Scary Movie 6. A lot of people hate that movie, but it's doing very, very well. And The Furious, I think I read somewhere that it's got a budget of around $20 million. But now I can't find where I read that. In any case, this was not a $100 million movie. You don't need $100 million to make a great action movie. You need 20, and you need phenomenal talent. You need the best goddamn martial artists on planet Earth, and that's who they found for this movie. So, yeah, high five to everybody involved. High five to everybody who's been spreading the word, and this is me playing my small role in helping spread the word about The Furious as well. So, go fucking see it. If you want to see more kick-ass movies like The Furious, well then vote with your dollars. That's the only way good movies continue to get made. Support the filmmakers that are good, and you ignore the filmmakers that sucks. You starve them of oxygen. You don't have to say nice things about them. Like your time and your attention and your money are all precious resources that you should spend very wisely and very sparingly, but The Furious is absolutely worth your time, your attention, and your money. So let me know what you think down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking, subscribing, hitting that notification bell. Hope everybody has a great weekend at the movies, but more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.